Welcome to the Vocation of the Business Leader podcast. I'm Greg Bostert. Here, we explore how Catholic leaders let Christ and the teachings of the church he founded guide their work, integrating faith and business. Each episode offers inspiring stories to help you live an undivided life. Thanks for joining us. Let's meet our guest, Raul Hernandez, Ochoa. Welcome, Raul.
Greg, I'm excited and energized to be here.
Awesome. Would you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
San Diego, California. Surf a little bit, not a pro. Do a lot of exercise here. Got 2 kids at home. And I help companies grow through strategy, go-to-market, sales, and organizational leadership.
Okay. So you have had your business Do Good Work. That's a good name. I like that.
Correct.
So for over 6 years. So what was the journey to starting your business?
Probably have to go over, if it's 2024, maybe 12 years ago. I was in incubators, launching startups, testing startups, all the way till 2015, where I was trying to start a software company that turned into a marketing agency, and partnering with a friend from Brooklyn, New York, who we never met until we met remotely in Skype days, if you still remember that. Started a company, New York based, started serving clients and growing. And like, you know what, if we're going to need to go to the next level, we need to be managers versus doers. And that didn't feel right for me at the time. I really loved the work and diving deep and actually cutting my teeth. So I left and supported other agencies in Scale and Grow Online. And through the online space, I was exposed to mergers, acquisitions, to being in leadership within 3 months of being in an agency. And I think through God's providence, I've been able to work with very prominent thought leaders in the online space, and just seeing some of the most popular offers in the internet market, and work behind the scenes there and working in scaling agencies. And then a mentor at the time told me, "Hey, you should write down what you did to help scale agencies and businesses." I'm like, "Why should I write it down?" It's like, "You should write it down." I'm like, okay, so that became the book. And then from there, I leveraged that and worked with other agencies and business owners and offers to help them grow and experience success at a different level.
Cool. So what you're doing is a very highly competitive industry. So how do you maintain your ethical standards while staying competitive?
I don't think it's very hard to be ethical, because if you do the right thing, everything's going to work out for you. I was talking to another mentor of mine, and he was mentioning that when you're at the top and you're scaling, you're growing, you can only stay there if you're the right kind of person. And I've seen this firsthand. I've had clients or people that would want to be clients that were doing, I think they were doing like $200,000 or $300,000 a month. They wanted to get to $1 million a month. We were chatting, and I wasn't treated well, and I didn't like that experience. And fast forward, their business is now not doing very well because of like bad business decisions, market conditions, etc. Not making a judgment call, but also like, you got to be the right kind of person if you want to get the right kind of results. So I think it kind of comes hand in hand. Like, you can't get and stay at a certain level of success without being ethical. And I don't think there's anywhere around that in my view, really.
Yeah. So do you have employees?
Your supports from the agency days of and building in-house teams, been able to support and work with a lot of people and be responsible for up to 70 people at one time. So taking a breather from that, I like running solo. But it ebbs and flows. Maybe you never know, next year you'll see me with another team.
Yeah. So share with us a little bit about your faith journey and how your faith has shaped you.
Yeah, the majority of it was when I was dating my wife. Without knowing it, she gave me this book, like Discernment, from Gallagher, and that completely changed my life on Christmas. I think she gave it to me literally 10 years ago, maybe more, but it was I think it was Christmas 24, could have been 23, Christmas 13 or 14. And I absorbed that because like, it's more about like, how do you know which decision to make in life and which direction to take? And that completely changed my life, to go into adoration as often as I could, daily mass as often as I could, to a church that had a relic from St. Faustina. And I didn't know that at the time, but for some reason, even to this day, like, I love that area. Why? Because St. Faustina, it's also my birthday, is her feast day. So I'm like, there could have been a connection there. So from there, just growing in my faith and my work, and just executing and trying to shape who I am every single day to show up as my best self, and stretching myself as much as I can, even through physical exercise or training for like a half Ironman, like stuff like that helps you really shape and discipline all areas of your life. So I see faith as an integral part of that, because in business and or whatever you do in life, really, like you have to believe that the future is already here and take actions towards that unseen future. If not, you're never going to take any risks. So there's an integral play with that as well.
So you have your book. Did you write a book about the 5 pillars of heroic leadership, or did I get that mixed around?
No, that's part of one of the books.
Okay.
I've written, I think, 3 or 4 books. They're mostly guides. They're not like 200 page books. They're practical guides that you can implement and start seeing results nearly immediately, because I don't like reading and then never implementing ideas.
So what are those pillars?
Heroic leadership.
Mm-hmm.
These are 5 pillars. This isn't for me to say that, because you'll see this, or if you're watching or whatever, like, who's this young guy? Why is he telling me how to be a leader or whatever? From helping multiple companies, over hundreds of companies at this point, working with hundreds of founders and even training thousands of people online remotely in paid programs, etc. The principles that I derive, because there's truth in the ecosystem. This isn't to say I discovered something new. No one does. But when you see different angles of that truth, this is my angle of that truth, of what does it take for a leader to be, for them to grow through fast growth-paced environments, and mostly remote and online. So the first thing is, and this is probably the most important, is the communication skill set, that a leader sets the tone and the direction for everything that they're doing, because everything that you think, say, and do as a leader is mimicked to the organization, especially if you're the cap and the team is capped by your intellect, by your vision, then literally everything that you say, do, and execute stops at you. But then we also need to be data-driven leaders. That's the second pillar, is that we make decisions based on numbers and data and make a strategic move depending on what it's actually telling us, versus emotion, which is simple to say in real time. When you're in the thick of it, when you're moving pretty quickly, when you're quote unquote putting out fires, you can get kind of lost with that. Another pillar is setting the tone and facilitating movement with the organization, because the key thing with every single team is that they have to know what to do and actually do it. You can see that I have a thing about information and action, removing the friction from those two things. Like, how do we remove the friction so that our team is being facilitated with the right resources, trainings, beliefs, which not a lot of people don't talk about, beliefs around the work, who they are, and how to execute. Because when you lead at a certain point, especially for small businesses, like if you have 20, 30, 40, 50, 70, 100 employees, like, you become a coach to your team. They look up to you, and like, some people can't handle that. Some people aren't built for that. But if you want to grow and do this effectively and maintain it over time, not just a 1-year sprint, not a 3-year sprint, not a 5-year sprint, but be consistent, you got to be that kind of person, which is going back to your original question. Like, you got to be the right kind of stuff in order to maintain the right kind of quality over time. It is an endurance race. Maybe that's why I like training for this stuff. Those are 3 out of the 5. I want to pause so that we can unpack that if you want to ask any questions before we dive into the other.
I saw on your website about that you're doing a talk about that business leaders can be the biggest bottleneck in their business. Does that have to do with that they're not letting their employees flourish, and they're just controlling, or what is that, the bottleneck?
There's so many ways to define the bottleneck. Specifically, the talk that you're referring to was around KPIs and like how you can be the limiter of a specific key performance indicator within the organization. But this also stems back to your nuanced question around, as a leader, you have to be self-aware of who you are and your limitations. Ego and blindness limits that. Sometimes it's willful ego, which is normal. Sometimes it's hubris, which I've seen and experienced. Sometimes it's blindness, which a lot of us probably are going through right now. That we don't take the time to self-reflect. We don't take the time to sit down in a holy hour. We don't take the time to figure out who are we and where are we messed up and how do we fix that? Because that's work. And that's real deep work versus, the burning emergency billable hours if you're doing the hourly thing, or the client work, or my team's got this thing, or I'm traveling and speaking. Like, we always get quote unquote busy with motion, but we actually may be working slower. And we have to cut some of that quote unquote busy work to have a higher velocity and speed into the direction that we want to head into. So to answer your question, it's we either are limiting ourselves, we're limiting those who we're working with, we're limiting a core key process. And since I work directly with founders, even for like very successful and high, fast-paced growing companies, the organization is a mirror of how they think and work. And you really have to have a self-reflective view, which is fine. Like this is a beautiful part about business, that it is a mini cosmo of your brain of how you execute and do, and like your vision for it, which is what it's about. Um, but that can also be negative. Like what if your your potential of thinking limits your potential of doing? Are you open enough to seeing outside ideas and perspectives for a bigger cap or a bigger way of thinking and doing things? That takes outside investment or new ideas or talking to a mentor or being in a different room or hiring different people. So it all stems from yourself, view of others. So there's multiple ways to answer that question, but that's well, I'll leave it for now.
Have an informed execution, sort of like prudence. And so could you dive more into that?
Prudence is the number one word there, which when you're working in a fast-paced environment or you're working primarily remote, where you don't what is truth? You got to figure out what is actually happening, and sometimes you have pressures to make decisions quickly because of the circumstances. But you got to figure out, okay, what is actually happening here? What are the numbers saying? What are the people saying? What is the perspectives? And then being able to remove yourself from the situation and identify the core problem that's happening, and being able to disassociate your personal perception and feelings around that core issue to really address what is actually going on. There was an interesting exercise that we did for one of the events that we were putting on for one of the teams that I helped support, that they had people show up in a room and then they classify them depending on their personality style. And then they didn't tell us what it was, but it was essentially breaking up the room on your disc profile. And people would be in different quadrants of the room, and you would be able to tell like your personality traits, how you communicate, how you'd like to be communicated, et cetera, et cetera. And the whole idea, the whole lesson from that exercise, which was pretty fun, it's like a whole hour lesson, was you need to know where your natural style is. But if you truly want to lead and move people and lead a movement or lead and support an organization, you need to be able to walk in between the quadrants. You need to be able to go to the center of the room and understand different perceptions, different personality styles, different ways of viewing the world, different views of how they view themselves, and move within the center. Doesn't mean you're going to stay there. And some people, like I can tell you right off the bat, and leaders and people and clients that I've worked with, impatient, don't care to do that work, may not have time to do that, or may not know how to do that, which is fine. But you have to know where you're at doing this. So when it's called informed execution, you got to be able to do all that and still make a decision and get things done. So not easy. I'm not putting this as an idealistic thing. All I'm saying is that this is doable. If a dude from San Diego whose English is his second language, who grew up like literally, we'll put the little different bars, who grew up in very low income or whatever, if I can do it, you can do it listening to this.
Is that something that you train your clients on?
Not primarily like this is the only thing, but when I work with founders or their executives directly, I help challenge them and support them in seeing that. I don't really sell or solicit myself as I'm going to be your mindset coach or whatever, because there's a lot into that, but I naturally go into that regardless if we're at a table, at a men's group, at a friend's group, or with a client. Like I will challenge you, because in helping you, I help me as well. And it's a beautiful thing.
What do you think, is there a common need that you find when in your clients, or they're all different and you just have to figure out where to start?
Well, the common need, the main anchor that I focus on is growth. Go to market, sales, offer, packaging, pricing, positioning, and then from there, fulfillment, operations. And then the key thing are the humans, the leadership, the minds that are executing that. So the main needs from there are, if I were to put like circles or like Venn diagrams and overlap, the main needs are always sales and offer creation, and then the beliefs around execution. And the beliefs then that's when we work on the mind. Now, if you're talking about what are some of the things that they need to figure out, is just helping them see kind of the work that we just mentioned earlier, helping them see that as you grow, you become a coach, you support people. As you work with other humans, everything is solvable, but you'll have these similar trends, especially with change, and guiding them how to execute that change. And the nice thing about humans is that we're very predictable.
Yeah. Not broken.
Oh, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. So what are the last two?
The last two, these are soft. So setting the stage is like your vision. And I will say something about vision, and I'm not going to say like a famous 3-word operating system out there, but when you start focusing on only doing like vision for your company, you can become a delusional visionary. Just FYI, like that thing of spiraling into vision, like at some point you're going to have to come down to earth and apply it. If you say, oh, I have other people to do that and you can't actually apply it, I would actually challenge that. Like, are you really a founder or are you just an ideas person? And I've seen the dark side and the good light of that. So I'm just saying that openly. But that's setting the stage. It's like, here's the direction. Here's what we're going to do. Here are the initiatives, being able to execute and facilitate others to execute, not being afraid of getting your hands dirty if you have to. Because I think we're taught from MBAs and different schools, like, hey, you've got to hire managers. These managers going to do. Sure, but also like if you haven't read like Paul Graham's Founder Mode, like there's also an antithesis of that. Some of the best companies still have founders coming in and supporting and driving change themselves. So it's just like challenging thoughts here. Taking the informed execution, like we just mentioned. Now, the last two, these are soft. First is you got to be steady. No one likes a founder or a leader who is bouncing off the walls with hype energy and ideas that are different every single week, because people want stability and direction and seeing things through. Maturity sees things through. Okay, got to be steady. The other one is you got to fuel others. And this is, I mean, I've clients who have vision, like, we're struggling with this. This isn't to say that you're coming in and being a hype man for your team. That could be part of it. But it's also like, what does your team actually need? They need the tools, trainings, and support. But beyond that, what do they need? They need the encouragement, the empathy, and the understanding. Because again, like you mentioned, we're all human, we're all broken. And the saying always is like, people don't leave a job, they leave a manager. And part of that is failing to fuel others correctly. And time again, even doing it myself, you can't throw money to solve a problem. Even if you make the bounty or the commission or whatever exuberantly high, I can guarantee you cannot just throw money at a problem like that. You actually got to be the right kind of person, do the right kind of things, and support other humans who are trying to do the same thing as you are. Get better.
Yeah. What are some ways that culture of the company can make or break it?
Oh, these are really open-ended, huge questions. Oh my gosh. All right, so yes. Let me give you a frame on that, because I actually talk about this in one of the frameworks that I use for sales and go-to-market and sales enablement. When I work with clients and we're working on, okay, who do you want to attract? What kind of clients do you really want to work with? Like maybe they work with like 12 or 20 different industries. It's like, who do you want to work with? This actually is a culture question as well, because the culture has to align with the business model and it has to align with the product or the market. So culture is actually the stem of that. It isn't the whole hypey, culture. We take Fridays off, Hawaiian Friday, like whatever that. Yeah, that's cute. The whole idea is like, how does a team behave? What are the frameworks that we make decisions, aka your values, and what are our beliefs? Because I've seen a good friend and former client, he changed the culture to fit the performance needs of the clients, where the culture became almost like a SWAT SEAL team, where they had to be like on point. It's like a performance culture. It's pretty freaking cool, but it's not for some people, right? So it's not for everyone. Yeah. But that matches their business model, which matches the clients and the expectations of the clients. So culture actually has to model all of those things together. It has to model, who am I actually serving, in what industry, niche, or vertical, horizontal positioning? What is our product or service? What is the expectation of that? And what's our business model? And the team and the beliefs and the operations, because culture is essentially a set form of beliefs and how we behave, because beliefs drive behavior, and the values are your guardrails of how to do the stuff, make decisions. So if you say, what is culture influence? Well, culture is pretty much, if we're looking at a Thomistic approach here, culture is the freaking arrow that everything leads to. Because, you know, Thomas talks about that everything is arrows pointing to a direction and a goal and an outcome. So what is culture? It's the tip of the arrow.
Yeah, that makes sense, because sin is an archery term, missing the mark. And so, yeah, that's good.
That is true. And I think a lot of people leave culture as the thing back of their mind, like, that doesn't matter. But it's completely relevant to everything you do.
What advice would you have for a business leader out there that is struggling to integrate their faith in their work life?
That's tough. I don't know. If you're struggling, I mean, I don't know why you're struggling. One. Number two is it a fear thing? Is it a personal thing? Is it an industry thing? Are you working with highly regulated pieces? I think, to be honest with you, I've never really been super shout from the rooftop kind of guy. Like, what I'm doing right now is a little bit out of my comfort zone, but I think it's important because one of my mentors mentioned that when he fills auditoriums like around the globe. And he's like, if I don't talk about my faith, I think more than 60 or 70% of people like are Christian or something like that. He's like, then I'm going to lose like half of my audience or like a majority of my audience because everyone wants to know where you're at. So that's why I'm doing this now. But to integrate it within the work that you do is like, how are you showing up as a person? What are the words that you use? What do you view yourself as? How do you view other people? Are you transactional? Are you relational? Why are you doing what you're doing? So how do you show up in a micro way where they can sense that this is a little bit different or that your approach is different? I kid you not, I firmly believe that for me to be able to have meditation and contemplation, either through holy hours or through prayer, helps me show up in a way more different pace. And we have neuroscience to prove this too. That the way in the theta and the waves that we have from our brain, the way that we operate, we create this, I don't know, this aura, this energy field or whatever. I don't know too much about that yet. But we create that. And the way that you execute reality, the way that you live and step into this reality that we have when we're working with other people, you do show up differently. So if that's all you do that. Wake up earlier, do something hard, take a cold shower, go out, go pray, do your thing, and then go to work, but do it in a different style. Do it in a different approach. Do the thing that you're uncomfortable with. Do the thing you're resisting. And the good that you're resisting, not the bad that you're resisting. Let me don't be smart, but it's like step into that. Now, if you're I think the idea of leaving your faith at the door at work is a dying idea. I think this is something that is going to change it. A lot of people are doing it and living it. But just look at athletes. Like if you see the athletes, or I'm watching the world like a baseball fan here. Every single athlete that does this sign, like they're living it out in the field. Why don't you live it out in your field? In a simple way. They're not preaching. They're not taking the mic. But the way they talk, the way that they do their thing, the way that they execute, and the way that they attribute their success. So that's a cool way to share that. It's a cool way to show like, hey, this works. I was even listening to a podcast with this dude that when he bought property, because he bought businesses every 6 weeks, or properties and businesses like that every 6 weeks. And he said that him and his wife would go to the property and pray out every corner of the property for the business. He didn't tell us what to think or believe. He just told us, here's what I did. That's different.
So what is your ideal client?
Ideal client this is interesting because I've worked both within the organizations to scale offers and scale product-based services or coaching and info, and then also the businesses themselves to scale that. So right now I primarily have those two as the dual. For the service-based side, they're selling something expensive, multi 6-figure relationships, and they're selling technology, website, marketing, like to other clientele, and they need support to narrow and like refine that and create more predictability, but also to operationalize that. And on the other side, I'm also supporting and helping offers, like if you're helping people make transformations in their life through a positive lens of health or mindsets or personal development, just how do you take that offer and reframe it and go to market with that? So I support those as well, but it's a good even split.
Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you'd like to talk about?
I mean, there's a running information, but I think the key thing really that you didn't ask me, I think you did ask a lot. I think the key thing is just focusing on your habits, focusing on the thing that you're doing, you're executing. How are you showing up? How are you looking through it? Because the number one skill set, this is something that's come to my realization because the more that I learn, the more that I develop. The number one skill set in life and as a human is communication. And if we really do believe that the word was made that the word, the logos, was made flesh. That's communication. Because if you think of the eternal mind and then the act of that and the love of those two things are in the Trinity, then the communication piece is the number one thing that we can do here as humans. How we communicate to ourselves, number one, to the source, and to others. And through that, we can fix a lot of unintentional miscommunication, which creates conflict. And it's because a lot of us are either in a program, like we're running our subconscious mind, and we're not actually thinking about what we're doing, which is why meditation and contemplation are so important in goal setting, so that you can have direction in your life. And like every hour, like Jose Maria says, like pretend you're on the road to Emmaus, so like stay with us for today. Because he's always passing by, but you never really think, wait, can you just stay for a little bit? Can you just like hang out here? And then always asking, seeking, and knocking. Not like, oh, I want this thing, please, please, please. More like, help me with this, and invoking the Spirit to be with you, which is so pivotal and important to ask. Then when you're seeking, asking at the same time. And when you're doing, before you do, ask for that support. And I think you'll see mini or macro. I think macro, but these are small transformations over time. They create a macro transformation in your life.
Yeah, it's beautiful. That's awesome. I think that's a good place to end. Thank you so much, Raul. I really appreciate your time.
Greg, thanks for making this platform.
You bet. Thank you for joining us today on today's episode of the Vocation and Business Leader Podcast. We hope you found inspiration as we explore the powerful union of faith and business. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share it, leave a review. Your support helps. Until next time, may God bless you.